One. Sorry, I talk about digital, so I use digital to talk about digital. It's a funny thing. Just going to grab one of these before we start. So what you can see up there is a wonderful picture of a bunch of people who recently got together for a convergence with the Australian Conservation Foundation. So this very happy group of people are wanting to take action on the Adani coal mine, and they self-funded themselves to go up to Brisbane to have a get-together and learn about campaigning skills from some of ACF's community organising campaigners. And the reason that I put this up here is that I think that whenever we talk about digital, we should also be talking about the offline application of what we're trying to do. And in this instance, these people are learning a whole bunch of digital skills, they're learning a whole bunch of traditional community organising skills, but they all got together because ACF took an approach about 7 years ago where they started to heavily invest in their digital systems so that they could have a really strong two-way engagement process with their supporter base. So I'll be talking about that. I want to first of all give you a little bit of context of who I am. So when I was 20, I was a very uncertain arts major at a university in Western Australia. I knew I was at university, but I didn't really know why I was there. And coming up to a holidays, I saw a notice board, a notice on a notice board at the university asking people to come down to a forest camp in the southwest forests of Western Australia. Someone had built a platform in a tree to protest against the clearfell logging of the state's Karri forests at the time. The forests were being logged for wood chips to be sent to Japan. So a little camp had formed underneath this platform, and I thought it sounded like a pretty interesting way to spend my uni break, so I jumped on a bus and I went down there. I thought I'd be there for a week, and I pretty much stayed for 3 years and finished the rest of my degree sitting underneath a Karri tree like this, going back to the city when I needed to. And I quickly changed my major to that of journalism and creative writing because I learned firsthand the power of media. This is in a time where we were still using fax machines and people were getting their first Hotmail email address. If you listen to the radio, they would read out URLs as http://www. Who put your hand up if you remember that? It's not so long ago, we don't have to be ashamed, we can all admit it. So I found myself in this forest, kind of thrust in the media role. I was writing media releases and sending them out via fax. I was organising for people to write letters to the editor because that was the way that you showed that you had power in the community for the politicians making decisions. And we ensured that there were letters in the, letters in the Western Australia, the one newspaper, every single day, and people did that. It was 3 years of my life that was really influential in the way that I've lived for the rest of my life. Over that period of time, we saw the breakdown of the Liberal Party in Western Australia, and there was Liberals for Old Growth Forest was registered as a political party. We saw Doctors for Old Growth Forest stepping out. We saw Artists for Old Growth Forest. Everyone was sticking Old Growth Forest after their names because it was such a big issue in the town of Perth. We finally saw Richard Court's Liberal government overthrown by Jeff Gallop based on forest policy alone. So it was a pretty incredible campaign, but only successful because of the people who wanted to go and sit under a tree, but also the people who took that will to see something different and put it in the public space and give people a way to participate. People who were involved in rallies, they were involved in writing letters to the editor, they were involved in, ringing up talkback radio. And it was a way of digital campaigning with very basic digital skills at the time. Just to note, 500,000 hectares of old growth forest in the southwest was put in permanent protection based on this campaign. So I went on to work as a daily newsroom journalist around Australia, And then finally my call into the environment just got too strong, and I took a role at the Australian Conservation Foundation, where I spent 7 years helping them set up their digital engagement team. When I started at ACF, I was a maternity leave position. I don't know if many of you people are familiar with their membership magazine, Habitat. So I kind of got a traditional communications role, and it took 2 weeks to send an email to the supporter base. And this, when I say 2 weeks, I'm talking only 5 years ago. It took 2 weeks for Australia's largest environmental not-for-profit to send an email to its supporter base. So, that gives you a bit of heart if you've got your own digital issues going on in your organisations. But ACF recognised that it really needed to invest in its infrastructure, and it needed to move away from the traditional idea of communication as being a broadcaster, of just yelling at its supporters, telling them that they had to do stuff because the world was going to shit. And actually it needed a two-way communication strategy where it was asking its members and its supporters to be involved, to tell them what the issues they cared about were, and foster a dialogue that enabled trust to develop so that people were wanting to get involved on campaigns that can take a really long time. They needed the longevity. I left ACF to set up OrganiseUs, which is why I'm here today. OrganiseUs is a digital communication agency that works specifically on issues around environmental and social justice. We work on campaigns, communications, engagement strategies, and we also run a really comprehensive training program because in Australia not a lot of people have got nuanced understanding of how to run digital campaigns, and we're hoping to try and change that. I've worked on some of these big campaigns. The top one is James Price Point Gas Hub. The middle one is the ongoing conversation around Australia's climate policy. And the bottom one is just a picture I love where a whole bunch of community organisers came together and we run trainings on digital skills. So, we're here to talk about digital, and we're here to talk about what good digital can do. So, what are the aspects of a good digital policy? It's really strong communication, it's connection with people, it's conversion. You get people's interest, it's how to move them to action, the thing that you need to do, get them to do, to see the change you want. It's coordination, and it's focusing on campaigns. And a really good digital communication strategy does all of these things at the same time. So when digital is done well, it's an engaging two-way communication channel, and it's driven by users, not organisations. I think this is one of the biggest things that we all have to face when we're talking particularly around the environment, and particularly when we're coming from a research background, is it's actually not about us. And the science can be there to help guide the conversation, but the conversation is actually about our community, and it's actually about our users, because we can't do this alone. They're the people that we need to be moving along to change the mindset on a broad scale. And I think it's one of the most challenging things that any organisation has to face, because we have limited resources and we're desperate to try and tell everybody what we need to do. But the long-term goal is actually trying to change the mindset, similar as what Tanya was talking about earlier. And the only way we can do that is when we're taking our users and putting them front and central of our communication strategies. I'm going to give some examples of science done in different ways. So this is NASA. Who's familiar with NASA? So, not very long, up until very long ago, NASA was seen as a pretty boring, it had its heyday, right? The heyday was in the 60s, everyone was kind of bored by NASA. There were a bunch of generally blokes in white lab coats talking about really important rocket science stuff that unless we were really interested in rocket science, we just had tuned out. So it had a bit of a brand crisis, and we're starting to lose a lot of funding as well because the government was looking at it and going, who really cares about this stuff anymore? So they decided to take on a really interesting communication strategy, and I'm focusing here specifically on their social media. So NASA now has 120 million followers across all social media channels, and that growth has happened in the last 4 years. The way that they did that is they gave their space program a first-person point of view. So they started to run their entire communication strategy based on the point of view of the Mars rover. They also decided to just go with humour. So they started to look at what was happening in the public sphere, in the media, and actually playing with it and having a bit of fun. So these examples you'll see at the top, we've got the NASA's Juno mission, and they're tweeting, "Main engine burn is go, I'm burning, burning, burning for you, hashtag Jupiter." Followed up at the bottom, "Engine burn complete with orbit obtained, I'm ready to unlock all your secrets, Jupiter, deal with it." The Curiosity rover is a really fun one to kind of take your time and have a look at the whole communication strategy, but this is just one where they're saying, "No shame in my hashtag selfie game. These pics help me learn, my team see the state of hardware over time." So they're still bringing it back to their core purpose, but they're doing it with a sense of humour. I particularly love this because I was a massive Prince fan. A purple nebula in honour of Prince, who passed away today. So they also stood up, pushed themselves outside of the idea that they could only talk about things that were happening in their kind of strategy and what they were planning to do, and actually just talking about popular events and really building up that brand recognition and building up their loyalty. They also took this and made science and social media really fun for their kind of core influencers. So they told people who were following them and retweeting them, "Hey, if you want to get involved, we're going to get on this website, we're going to list all of our kind of dry, boring, sciencey stuff, and how about you take control and tweet about it for us using the tone of voices that we've got." So they gave away the power of their messaging and their brand and gave it to their influencers in their community and let them run with it, and it's been incredibly successful. So I can't talk about digital without touching on social media. You're going to be having more conversation around social media later this afternoon. But when we talk about connection, we can't talk about connection without talking about social media in our current day. It's how people connect online. It's the #1 way Australians are connecting online. So this is just an interesting slide just to look at how much time we're spending on digital channels. So each of these are not singular of the other. So our average daily use on the internet is we're spending roughly 5.5 hours a day. We're also spending an hour and a half roughly looking at the internet on our mobile phones on top of that 5.5 hours. We're spending roughly just under 2 hours on social media across any device. And when you weigh that up, we're really not watching as much television as we used to. Right? We're getting our news and our information through our internet and through our social channels. Something that just constantly blows my mind is the growth of social media in Australia. We now have 17 million people actively using Facebook every month in Australia. 17 million unique users we've hit, and that has grown 2 million in the last 12 months alone. So every part of our digital strategy and our communication strategy needs to be looking at how we're connecting with people, where they are, and where they are is on social media. So here I'm going to talk about a campaign that has really looked at that connection and is converting and coordinating its campaign strategy to move people towards a very simple goal. So this again, we're looking at science, but this is the health space. So this is a breast cancer education program. It's the Worldwide Breast Cancer Organisation. They have a very, very, very simple website. But the beauty of this website, they're a global organisation, is they recognised that instead of telling everybody about what they want to do and who they are, they invested their money in just being able to translate their website in 12 different languages, because they're recognising it's the World Wide Web and we can talk to people. And they very simply use social media to drive people to their website through really basic imagery. This has been voted one of the most successful campaigns of 2016-2017 for its outcomes. What they tried to do, this quote is from the CEO of the organisation, it doesn't matter if you have a high literacy level, if you can't read, you can still look at this image and save a life. So they ran a campaign called #KnowYourLemons, right? And I don't know if you can see clearly in the bottom left there, it's a bunch of lemons in an egg carton, all different shapes, misshapes, so that women can know, or men, looking at their women's breasts, if they saw any of these, there might be something wrong. They translated this as back on the website into 12 languages. So the small amount of text in each of these was translated. It went absolutely crazy across social media. They put up a whole bunch of video. Video is king on social media. Really simple graphics, invested heavily in their translations, and have rolled out an incredibly successful program. This campaign reached 317% over its fundraising goal in the first 3 months. Their entire purpose is breast cancer awareness. It's an education service, and they run a lot of on-the-ground programs in countries all around the world, trying to get women early awareness programs. Sorry, I'm completely losing my word there. And it has been incredibly successful. They knew who their audience was, they spoke to their audience clearly, and they kept it pretty simple. I'm going to deviate and touch on plastic bags. I had a little chat with Tanya on Friday. I knew she was going to talk about plastic bags, and it's an issue that's still going on. Who has been aware of the new #BanTheBag campaign? Put your hand up. Yeah? Are you aware of it because of the project? Yeah? Are you aware of it because of Waleed Ali? No. So, ban the bag, as Tanya talked about, it's been an issue for quite a few years now. It's suddenly in the limelight again because Waleed Ali used his voice and his power to set up the Change.org petition. So they've been promoting this on the project. It's an alliance with Clean Up Australia Day and the project. Clean Up Australia Day haven't had to do a lot of the heavy lifting in this media moment. They've done a lot of the heavy lifting in the past, but at the moment they're a brand alliance. And what's been really interesting about this campaign, and was a really strategic decision by the project, was to use a platform like Change.org. They didn't try and drive this through their own website and just get the traffic and the data there. They know that the issue around plastic bags at this stage is two. One, it's individual behaviour change and trying to get people to agree that they actually don't need to take single-use plastic bags, that they can do that. And it's two, they identified the 3 political players at the moment in 3 different states that need community pressure put on them to be able to make decisions. And they also held up the other states and the other premiers as beacons of hope. Some states are doing this, others aren't. But they strategically chose to do this on Change.org because Change.org is about the individual. It's individual petition starters who are advocating for change on an issue. So they're using the Project TV to drive petition signers on here, but they actually stepped back from it and said, first of all, we don't need the data, we don't need to own this, it's about driving people towards putting pressure on these 3 players to get the change that we want. There's currently just under 150,000 signatures on this. One out of the 3 here have kind of put up their hands in WA and said, yes, we do want to see, we're going to do a review on this. Still pressure to go in Victoria and New South Wales, and if you haven't signed it already, please do. And the other great thing that they've done on this is when you scroll down in the petition, they gave you the phone numbers to be able to ring them. So they're saying, yeah, sign the petition, but also take the further action and make the change. Another example of another similar campaign that ran on Change.org was the Vote Home campaign. So this is an alliance of nearly 30 different homeless, housing affordability, community services organisations who have never traditionally been political. But they knew that leading up to the last federal election, they were at the risk of having what little funding that still remained for homelessness services and housing affordability stripped. And so that they knew that they needed to try and get it up there over the federal election campaign. So 6 weeks before the federal election, they finally went, we've got to do something. And so they turned to running a campaign on Change.org. The reason that I'm putting this up as an example is because what what this does is you'll see at the top, it talks about just under 43,000 supporters have signed this petition, but it's actually 9 petitions. This is a feature on Change.org called Movements, and anyone's got access to it, but it takes bravery for organisations to do it. So one individual organisation puts up a petition, and they allow anyone to put up a petition on a similar theme that sits underneath their main petition. Sounds great. It is great, but it takes trust and it takes an understanding that you're decentralising power. You're allowing individuals around a theme to put up a petition and talk about the issues that you care about. It's a really great way of decentralising the power, but a lot of organisations are quite nervous at letting go of that kind of risk management. So that leads me to a conversation on network change. I'm realising we're running a little bit, So we'll whiz through this one, but I'm more than happy to talk about this afterwards, and there's a report that I've got linked to at the end of this. So network change there was an organisation in Canada called NetChange who have put together a review of the 50 most influential campaigns in the last 10 years and what their common themes are. This is the link to the report, but I'll link to it again later for you to read afterwards. So in looking at the review, these are some of the campaigns and organisations that they looked at. They recognised the common themes of things that aren't working. So when campaigns are failing, they're failing because we've got media fragmentation, we've got a drop in attention spans. People are across multiple channels, they've got limited time to have in-depth information on an issue and we're distracted. There's more organisations and causes on the issues that we're all trying to fight for the attention of the same people. There's a broad loss of faith in experts and old institutions. And there's a rise of engagement. People want to give more, they want to be more active, but these older organisations and groups don't have the digital tools allowing them to do that. There's a lot of rise of free agents. We've got more NGOs and organisations. And policies and ideas don't change the world. We have solutions that need political will to challenge powerful actors. So these are the common themes of where things aren't working. It's a big old messy ball. But when they did a breakdown of things that are working, it's when the institutional heavyweights, where you've got centralised leadership, top-down control, massive engaged membership and supporter bases, and really large lobbying budgets, work together with the grassroots upstarts. I'm having interesting slide interpretations here, but you can still read it. So these young upstarts like the 350.orgs, the new, the get-ups, the kind of new organisations, have horizontal distributed organisations. They're inclusive, they're empowering of participants to lead change. They're not as controlling around their supporter bases. And then we have the direct networks. So when you've got organisations with central strategic leadership and strong agency are working and collaborating together with partners and supporters, and they're marrying the old power with the new power. So when these three groups are working together, the common theme is that they're having the most impact. So the 4 principles of directed networks is being open to people power, creating cross-movement network hubs, framing a compelling cause, and running with focus and discipline. So we're running low on time, we'll whiz through these, but when we're open to grassroots power, we allow for customisation and adaptation, we gather ideas and content from the crowd, and we show our people power. There's no point developing a really strong database of supporters if we don't know how to use that power to influence the change that we need. Building cross-movement network hubs. I think this is fascinating. You would have seen the rise of the hashtag instead of the brand. An example of that is the Adani campaign. It's hashtag Stop Adani. Who is behind that campaign? I don't think a lot of people necessarily in this room would know the different organisations behind it. It's a decentralised power. It was the same thing with the hashtag Let Them Stay refugee campaign, which really helped to start to shape and create a new narrative around asylum seekers in Australia. And it's framing a compelling cause in our communications online. So it's focusing on actionable problems and solutions, employing cultural storytelling, creating oppositional framing with heroes and supervillains, and it's multi-channel mastery. So So it's understanding what channels we need to be on and being masters of them and choosing which ones we also don't need to be on. It's running with focus and discipline, so being agile, testing often and failing fast. It's focusing energy on key moments, organising and mobilising, and it's playing the long game. So as I mentioned, an example of this is the current Stop Adani campaign. This is roughly 30 different organisations who are investing kind of research, money, supporter bases, and really playing to each of their strengths under the united banner of Stop Adani. This is an example of leveraging some of the older institutions that have got massive supporter bases and membership organisations with the young upstarts of 350.org and running a series of sell-out and Stop Adani roadshows across the major capital cities in Australia just a couple of months ago. So moving people from the online to the offline. And the key thing is marrying old power with new power. So if we're really going to get the change that we want across the environmental sectors that we're working on, we really need to understand how we're going to step into the digital space, build up really strong new alliances and unlikely alliances, and talk to people, our users, our supporters, on the platforms that they're on the issues that they care about. And I love this quote, "You are not the hero of your story, your community is, but you can be Robin." And this is actually Janice Rodsi-Weiss, is the communication director of Audi. And there's my details with a